So yes, John and I always saw body talk and breakthrough as really being two wings of the same bird, yes, an adjunct to one another. No, there's no coincidence that we evolved these systems side by side, catalyzing each other. And so many of the teachings, philosophical, in body talk, point to the actual work that we do in breakthrough. Yes, so they give the intellectual understanding, but then we do the work in breakthrough. And that work, to be clear, is shadow work. It is about the process of individuation, the never-ending process. So to be clear, so what is shadow? What is the shadow? So as I think you said before, Ben, people think of the shadow as dark. So the shadow is what's unconscious. It's the unknown. And yet it's constantly impacting in our everyday life all the time. And an example of shadow work is, for example, people who are not consciously doing shadow work, they're perhaps doing what I would call the antithesis of it. So they're working with affirmations, for example, and using affirmations to suppress negative beliefs, which is, to me, rather like putting a Band-Aid on a volcano. But this very process of using affirmations to suppress negative beliefs, that work is the shadow, pretending to be the destroyer of the shadow. The affirmations are shadow, pretending to be the destroyer of the shadow. So every which way you turn, you bump into paradox, yin yang, it's not two. Yes. So the more you do the shadow work and it begins to filter in that understanding of much of what we consider the positive in life, that's the shadow, surprisingly. Yes. And the things that we worship as being very positive, and that's the shadow in masquerade. Yeah. So it's not that not doing shadow work, you're avoiding the shadow. No, you're totally ruled by the shadow. You just don't know it. And because you're ruled by the shadow, you'll be suffering and you don't know why. And because you're ruled by the shadow, you'll be projecting your suffering out there in, you make me feel. Even if it's, my darling, you make me feel so wonderful. And in that moment here, you have responsibility for my experience. I don't want it. So in that moment of declaration of love, shadow. So shadow is, it's human, it's life, yes? Yeah, and it is yin yang. So doing shadow work is simply, it's simply practical. If we really want to understand why we're suffering, it's not going to stop suffering, because conflict is just as much a part of life. It is life, yes, because change is life. But the more we are, the better we have adapted to fit into society, and repressed our instinctual. The more we really need to, the more we're going to be experiencing suffering in an unconscious, irresponsible way, see? And we can't do anything to help ourselves. So this was how breakthrough came about. It was, I could see just, I kept on getting into such pickles, and I understood this idea, but I want to be responsible for my own life, and I saw that impulse to put the responsibility out there, and how I struggled with that. It's like, so what I'm saying is, I want you to be in control of me. Which is what we see, people voting for dictators. Essentially, that's what's happening. Yeah. So breakthrough came about from that desperation. There must be another way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you said there at the and that that the shadow work, it is empowering. It's empowering to address the shadow, to look at the shadow, to 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 dive into the work. It's empowering, it's liberating, it's freeing. I remember you use the word suffering a couple times there. And I remember I don't remember if it's in that in the general members forum on the IBA, that thread about a little history. I don't remember if it's in that thread or in a different thread, but in one of those threads, you commented about how um, Body Talk and Breakthrough were born of suffering and wanting relief, right? Finding relief from suffering. And I remember one of the comments, again, I don't know if it was in response to that or if it was in a different thread, but someone saying, yeah, I don't think I was really attracted to Body Talk because I wanted to get rid of suffering. I thought it was, and then they said whatever. I think we're all we're all suffering. We're all suffering. So the lack of awareness of one's own suffering, I think, is wow, that's so profound. Um, yeah, to be unaware of how wounded, right? Each of us are. Um, Another thing that came to mind as you were speaking, I know I've mentioned this, use the word philosophy a couple times, and I think too many people associates the philosophy as we talk about it in Body Talk and Breakthrough as being theory, like it's theoretical, like it's something that's yeah, hypothetical. Like it could be like that, right? That equation between philosophy and theory or hypothesis. But as you alluded to or said, Esther, it's like for me, breakthrough is the practical application of the philosophy. You get the intellectual, like you said, you get the intellectual understanding in the Body Talk classes. And you can read the manual, and you can get a beginning of an understanding. But now, and tying back into the what I mentioned in the earlier vlog with Lonnie's quote, right? That practitioners of the work don't really believe in the work. So, okay, you have introduced to the concepts, introduced to the philosophy. So now live it.